The knock on the door wasn't loud, but it felt heavy. It carried a threat no one expected, and a lie that would soon collapse. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Daniel believed his home was the one place untouched by HOA politics. He paid dues, followed rules, and kept to himself. But that morning, two men stood outside wearing uniforms that looked official enough to cause fear. They claimed they were officers responding to a complaint. Daniel felt confusion rise, because he hadn't done anything wrong. They asked him to step outside and demanded documents. Their voices were firm, rehearsed, almost too confident. Something about them felt off, yet authority has a way of silencing doubt. Across the street, neighbors peeked through curtains, curiosity mixing with judgment. The men mentioned violations, fines, and possible removal from the property. Daniel's heart raced, not from guilt, but from shock. HOA warnings usually came as letters, not uniforms at the door. One of the men glanced around nervously while the other spoke, as if checking whether someone was watching. Daniel noticed small details, mismatched badges, vague answers, and an urgency that felt forced. Still, fear has weight, and it pressed down hard. He asked to call his wife, Sarah, who was inside preparing breakfast. The men hesitated, then nodded quickly, as if eager to move things along. Daniel turned back toward the house, unaware that this simple request would unravel everything. As he opened the door, Sarah looked up and sensed immediately that something was wrong, and the truth was about to surface. Sarah had always trusted instincts more than appearances. The moment she saw the uniforms, her calm expression hardened. She listened quietly as the men repeated their claims. HOA enforcement, emergency authority, immediate compliance required. Sarah didn't interrupt. She observed. Their uniforms were close to real but not exact. Their language sounded official yet empty. When she asked for badge numbers, one man spoke while the other avoided eye contact. They tried to pressure Daniel, mentioning consequences and deadlines that made no legal sense. Sarah stepped forward and calmly explained that she worked in municipal administration years ago. She asked again for identification, this time requesting dispatch verification. The men exchanged a glance. The air shifted. Confidence drained from their posture. One claimed the system was down and suggested resolving things quickly. Sarah smiled politely and said she would call the city to confirm their authority. That was the moment panic flickered across their faces. One man tried to stop her, saying it wasn't necessary. She dialed anyway. Neighbors stepped closer, sensing drama unfolding. Within seconds, the men's tone changed from firm to defensive. They backed away slightly, muttering about paperwork errors. Sarah kept her voice steady as she put the call on speaker. When the dispatcher answered, she clearly asked whether officers had been sent to their address. The answer was immediate and firm, no. Silence fell like a curtain. The men froze. One dropped his clipboard. The lie was exposed, but the story behind it was even worse. As Daniel processed what was happening, Sarah realized this wasn't random. Someone wanted to intimidate them. And only one group had motive, power, and history. The HOA. As the fake officers retreated toward their car, Sarah told the dispatcher to send real authorities. The neighborhood held its breath. What started as a knock had become something far more dangerous, and the truth was only. Real officers arrived minutes later, and the street felt different. Authority returned, and fear changed sides. Daniel explained everything while Sarah shared her suspicions. The real officers listened carefully, noting descriptions and the direction the fake officers fled. Neighbors now stood openly outside, shocked that such deception could happen in their community. One officer confirmed what Sarah already knew: impersonating law enforcement was a serious offense. As they spoke, a familiar car slowly rolled past the scene. The HOA president sat inside, watching carefully. Sarah noticed immediately. Her expression tightened. She pointed the car out to the officer, mentioning ongoing disputes and recent threats masked as warnings. The officer took note. Later that day, Daniel received a message from the HOA claiming there had been a misunderstanding and denying involvement. The timing was too perfect. Sarah gathered emails, notices, and recorded calls. Patterns emerged. pressure, intimidation, and escalating tactics. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. That evening, real officers returned with updates. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes had captured the fake officers arriving and leaving. One clip showed the HOA president's car following them moments later. The truth solidified. The HOA had crossed a line they couldn't step back from. Daniel felt anger, but Sarah remained focused. She believed in patience and proof. Over the next few days, investigators worked quietly. HOA meetings were canceled. Emails went unanswered. Rumors spread fast, and the board grew nervous. Then came the call Daniel never expected. The HOA requested a private meeting to resolve matters peacefully. Sarah smiled when she heard. Peace was no longer theirs to offer. What they had done was documented, undeniable, and dangerous. The trap they set had snapped shut on themselves. And soon, the entire neighborhood would learn how far power could fall when truth stands firm. The meeting room felt smaller than usual, and no one spoke freely, yet fear sat where authority once ruled. Daniel and Sarah entered calmly while board members avoided eye contact. The HOA president looked pale, her confident posture gone. She spoke first, claiming misunderstandings and blaming third parties. Sarah listened without emotion. Then she placed printed screenshots, timelines, and statements on the table. Each page landed like weight. Security footage. Dispatch records. Witness statements. The room grew silent. One board member asked if law enforcement was involved. Sarah answered honestly. Yes. Fully. The president's voice cracked as she tried to explain that things got out of hand. Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady. He said they trusted their community and were repaid with fear. That trust was broken. The board voted to suspend the president pending investigation. Days later, the news spread across the neighborhood. People whispered, shocked that those meant to protect order had chosen intimidation instead. HOA legal counsel advised full cooperation. Fines were reversed. Apologies were drafted but never sent. It was too late. The damage was done. Sarah received confirmation that charges related to impersonation were moving forward. The HOA distanced itself quickly, releasing statements about ethics and responsibility. Daniel watched neighbors wave again. Shame replacing judgment. The power dynamic had flipped completely. What once felt like an untouchable authority now felt fragile. Daniel realized something important. Silence enables control. Calm truth dismantles it. But one question remained unanswered. Why had the HOA targeted them so aggressively? The answer would come soon, and it would expose a truth far deeper than a single act of deception. The motive surfaced quietly, buried in old paperwork, and it changed everything Daniel believed. While reviewing documents, Sarah discovered a property dispute from years earlier. Daniel's home sat on land the HOA once planned to rezone for development. The project failed, but resentment remained. Daniel had unknowingly blocked future profits. The HOA president had pushed harder than anyone to reclaim control. When warnings failed, intimidation followed. Fake authority became a desperate gamble. Investigators confirmed the connection. It wasn't personal anger. It was calculated pressure. The realization hit hard. This wasn't about rules. It was about money and power. The neighborhood reacted with disbelief. Residents demanded resignations and transparency. Emergency meetings were called. Board members stepped down one by one. The HOA president resigned before charges were finalized. Daniel and Sarah were offered settlements, silence agreements, and incentives. They refused. They wanted accountability, not comfort. Real officers completed their investigation. The case moved forward. The HOA's reputation collapsed. Property owners formed a new committee focused on fairness and communication. Trust slowly rebuilt. Daniel felt relief, but also resolve. He learned that standing still in fear only feeds abuse. Standing calm with facts breaks it. One evening, Sarah looked at him and said the most dangerous lies were uniforms. Daniel nodded, knowing their story would warn others. What began as a knock became a lesson the HOA would never forget. Yet the final outcome still waited ahead, and it would close this chapter permanently. The final hearing was quiet, almost anticlimactic, but its impact echoed far beyond the room evidence was presented. Footage played. Statements were read. The impersonation attempt was undeniable. Consequences followed swiftly. Legal penalties. Civil liability. Public records. The HOA's insurance refused coverage due to intentional misconduct. Financial strain followed. The new board issued formal apologies to the community. Policies changed. Oversight was added. Daniel and Sarah sat together, calm and composed. They didn't celebrate. They reflected. Fear had knocked on their door, but truth had answered. Neighbors approached them afterward, thanking them for standing firm. Many shared stories of quiet intimidation they had never spoken about. Daniel realized their experience had given others courage. The HOA structure changed permanently, with resident protections written into bylaws. The president's name faded from authority to cautionary tale. Weeks later, life returned to normal. Morning routines. Friendly waves. Peace restored. Yet Daniel knew something important had shifted inside him. He no longer feared authority without proof. He trusted observation over assumption. Sarah reminded him that calm knowledge is power. Their home felt safer than ever, not because of rules, but because of awareness. The lie that came to their door had been defeated by one simple act: verification. And that lesson would stay with them forever. Still, there was one final thing left to say. A reminder worth sharing with anyone listening. Some stories end loudly, this one ended with clarity. Daniel and Sarah never sought attention. They wanted peace. But their experience became a warning others needed. Authority should never fear verification. Truth never panics when questioned. The HOA that tried to scare compliance into existence instead destroyed its own power. A knock built on lies fell apart the moment calm truth answered. The neighborhood learned together. Rules matter, but integrity matters more. Titles mean nothing without accountability. Daniel returned to quiet mornings and open windows, no longer haunted by uniforms or threats. Sarah kept her habit of questioning what didn't feel right. Their home became what it always should have been: safe, honest, untouchable by fear. And when people asked how they stayed so calm, Sarah answered simply. She trusted facts over fear. She verified before believing. The final twist wasn't revenge or confrontation. It was exposure. Truth doesn't shout. It waits. And when it speaks, lies collapse on their own, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.